Hey guys, Moves here with another video guide. In this guide, I'm going to cover everything you need to know to survive pre-patch for Battle for Azeroth as a Marksman Hunter. Just as a forewarning, everything in this guide is strictly for Prepatch 8.0 for the weeks leading up to Battle for Azeroth. Many of the things in this video may not hold true at level 120, so check back for an updated guide once BFA is released. As with everything in the last couple of weeks, tuning is likely to happen, so please be wary and check back for updates often. For those of you who have not been following along in the beta as much, what exactly has changed between Legion and the Battle for Azeroth? Well, first, Vulnerable no longer exists. Markshot, along with marking targets, has been completely removed. Battle for Azeroth has introduced a whole new set of spells, and each of them have different interactions with each other. We now have new focus generators called Steady Shot and Rapid Fire. Steady Shot is a weaker shot that has a base cast time of 1.75 seconds, while Rapid Fire is a 3-second channel baseline that fires a stream of shots that deal an immense amount of damage and generate focus with each shot fired. Our new focus spenders are sort of a carryover from Legion. Arcane Shot and Aim Shot both existed in Legion, but in Battle for Azeroth they are slightly different. Arcane Shot is a quick shot, similar to Legion, but is now a focus spender and does a good deal more damage. Aim Shot returns as our heavy hitter, however its cast time has been extended slightly to 2.5 seconds baseline and is now on a 2-charge system. Both cast time and charge time are reduced by haste. Our major cooldown, True Shot, has also been slightly modified. It now gives us slightly less haste, from 40% down to 30%, and since marking targets has been removed from the game, True Shot now gives us an additional charge of aim shot to compensate. Finally, reviewing some of the new passes we get in BFA, and my personal favorite is Precise Shots. Every time you cast an aim shot, it has a chance to proc 1 or 2 stacks of Precise Shots. Precise Shots then in turn buff your following Arcane Shot or Multi-Shot, causing it to deal 100% extra damage. This creates a sort of weaving style of play, which I will describe later on in the guide. Next, I want to talk about our AoE centered ability, Trick Shots. Trick Shots returns in Battle for Azeroth, but is slightly modified. In Legion, this was a talent that we could choose from. In Battle for Azeroth, it is now baseline and applies a buff anytime you cast a multi-shot. However, there is a caveat. To activate it, you must hit at least 3 targets with multi-shot. Once activated, your following Aim Shot or Rapid Fire will replicate to other targets. Aim Shot bounces up to 5 additional targets at 50% power, while Rapid Fire bounces up to 2 additional targets at full power. In my personal opinion, I wouldn't get too worked up over the target restrictions of Trick Shots, simply because other classes have also received similar treatment in AoE during Battle for Azeroth. Something else to note on Trick Shot is that all buffs that are applied to Aim Shot, things such as lethal shots, careful aim procs, double tap, etc., will also bounce with Trick Shots. Lastly, we have Lone Wolf. In Legion, Lone Wolf was a talent that we ended up taking by default for the most part. Now, in Battle for Azeroth, Lone Wolf has become baseline, and we get the bonus every time we do not have a pet out. When we summon a pet, the bonus goes away due to having the extra damage of the pet to compensate. Pets have also been reworked, but in this guide I'm not going to go over that. For a complete guide on the new pet system, click the link below to get to my Wowhead guide for BFA pets. For pre-patch purposes, as of now, Lone Wolf beats out pets in both single target and AoE, so pets should only be used for utility purposes. So, what else has changed in Battle for Azeroth? Over the past few weeks, if you've been playing in Legion, I'm sure you've noticed that our artifact has been increasing power. As soon as pre-patch hit, we lost all of our power in our artifact weapon. While the weapon is still usable, we no longer benefit from the traits that it gave us, similar to the picture shown here. This means that traits such as Bullseye, Rapid Killing, and Quick Shot that aided Marksman in Legion are no longer a thing. In Battle for Azeroth, a new system called Azerite is introduced, which semi-makes up for the legendary weapon trait system. Unfortunately for us, this new system does not exist until we begin leveling in Battle for Azeroth. For more information on Azerite gear and how it works, check out the Wowhead write-up on it down below in the description. Alright, so getting into some more specifics. Although our legendary weapons are gone, our legendaries that have been obtained throughout Legion are still usable until you hit level 116. This means that for the next month and for the first half of leveling in Battle for Azeroth, they will be usable. I plan to cover leveling in a separate guide. For now, let's just talk about legendaries from a rating perspective. First off, due to the rework of Marksman, a couple of our legendaries have been reworked. Previously, Zevrim's Hunger gave Markshot a 15% chance to not consume Hunter's Mark. Since Markshot and Hunter's Mark have been removed, this effect has been modified for 8.0. It now gives us a flat 3% damage. This is a very good passive effect considering most of our other legendaries are mediocre after the changes. The other legendary that was modified was Celerity, Cloak of the Windrunners. Since Windburst was removed and our artifact weapon no longer exists, this legendary now gives a flat 3% haste. While haste is actually one of our best stats in 8.0, this legendary again does not offer any primary stats, and so it's not as good as some of the other legendaries. You may be wondering how legendaries stack up against each other in terms of damage. Due to how Marksman was reworked, many of the legendaries we commonly used in Legion are now not as good for us. Legendaries such as the legendary boots, legendary gloves, and even the class ring are no longer that good. As awful as it feels, some of the highest simming legendaries are now high budget stat sticks, as well as some legendaries that value haste. After running extensive sims, these are my recommendations for both single target and multi-target scenarios. However, like always, it is recommended that you sim yourself for the best possible setup. These legendary recommendations may not be your personal best setup. Alright, let's talk about legendaries. The highest simming legendary right now is Zevrim's Hunger due to the large amount of stats and raw 3% damage bonus it gives us. Next comes Unseen Predatory Cloak. This is actually a survival legendary, however, since the rework, we can now use this across all specs similar to Zevrim's and Celerity. Finally, Celerity, Cloak of the Windrunners, and Cephas' Secret are both good due to the immense amount of haste they provide. I should note that Cephas' Secret becomes much better if you can constantly proc it. For AoE, Warbelt of the Sentinel Army remains the top dog. It is by far the best legendary whenever you can benefit from its passive, and outsims the other legendaries in AoE drastically, especially when double tap is paired with it. Coming in second and third, we have our passive damage legendaries, Zevrim's Hunger, and Unseen Predatory Cloak again. Once again, if you can proc Cephas' Secret, it also becomes much better and very good in AoE situations. Next, I wanted to go over tier sets. In Legion, wearing previous tiers due to the strength of the set bonus was fairly common, especially for Marksman Hunter. With the rework to how Marksman works and the new change to primary stats, we no longer want to drop item level for bonuses. As of Prepatch 8.0, Tier 20 is no longer good for us. Tier 21, on the other hand, has been reworked and is very good. In Tier 21, since both the 2-piece and the 4-piece of Tier 21 had spells that were removed in Battle for Azeroth, both of the bonuses have been reworked to simple passive bonuses. Tier 21 2-piece now gives 16% attack power, and Tier 21 4-piece now increases damage dealt by aim shot by 12%. Both of these are very strong and should be equipped unless you have significantly higher pieces. I should note that as of when this video was made, the Tier 21 2-piece, Blizzard actually flagged the attack power as melee attack power, so we do not actually benefit from the Tier 21 2-piece. However, it is still worth using the Tier 21 4-piece unless you have significantly higher off pieces. Alright, let's dive into stat priority for 8.0. Due to how the stat squish and change in stats played out, stat scaling in 8.0 is a bit skewed. In Battle for Azeroth, primary stats are king due to the stat rework. However, in Prepatch, secondary stats remain fairly close to primary stats. As always, for a more accurate stat weight, it is recommended that you sim yourself using raid bots. Again, as a disclaimer, the sims used here to generate the stat weights were generated from the most updated APL we have, but could very well change in the near future. They use a baseline mythic gear setup and are normalized stats. For the most up-to-date info, check out my written guide in the description below. I will always keep that up to date. Looking at the stat weights, weapon DPS is far greater than every other stat. This means that any relic upgrade, even 5 item levels, is an enormous upgrade for us. Next, agility is very good for us as well, which means that any item level upgrade is typically a DPS gain. Next, you can see in both single target and AoE, mastery is very good, followed by an equal distribution of versatility, haste, and critical strike. As for secondaries, I recommend aiming for mastery. Mastery is good in both single target and in AoE. For the rest of the secondaries, I would say try to get an equal balance of all 3 of them. Haste and crit are good in single target and AoE respectively, and versatility hovers in the middle-ish, so they all have about the same value in my personal opinion. In short, aim for gear with mastery, don't overload on haste, crit, or versatility, but try to have an even spread of them. Alright, now let's talk about racials in 8.0. Since the stat parameters are different for Prepatch, racials are also different. Prepatch is only about a month long, so in my personal opinion, it's largely not worth it to race change for pure DPS purposes. However, I'm including this for completion purposes. Again, as a disclaimer, these sims are with the most updated APL we have, but could very well change in the near future. They use a baseline mythic gear setup. For the most up-to-date info, check out my written guide in the description below. Here you can see the sim. A couple assumptions in this sim. This simulation was done using baseline Mythic Antaurus gear and is just to give you an idea of how things look in 8.0. The racial sim was done without a pet active since Lone Wolf is currently the highest simming versus a pet during 8.0. This means that Orc is simming less than it would if it had a pet out due to not being able to benefit from command. Pandas in this sim are eating lavish Suramar feast, which is a primary stat food. If you are eating any other food, pandas will fall in the sim. So why are some of the worst races in Legion all of a sudden good in 8.0 and Battle for Azeroth? Most of the races, such as Lightforged Draenei, scaled off of weapon DPS or attack power. Since the stats model has been reworked and primary stats are now in general the highest for most classes, this means that racials such as Light's Judgment are much more significant now. Alright, let's talk about gems, enchants, and consumables in Prepatch. For gems, I recommend using Saber's Eye of Agility. You can only use one, so in every other slot use Mastery Gem. Alright, next let's talk about the recommended enchants for Marksman Hunter. For your neck enchant, I recommend using Hidden Satyr. It sims and performs a lot better than both Mark of the Claw and Trained Soldier. For rings, use Binding of Mastery. For cloak, stick with the Binding of Agility. For consumables, food, I would stick to using Lavish Suramar Feast as the primary food. For potion, continue using Prolonged Power. And for flask, continue using 7th Demon Flasks. Now let's talk about some of the talent builds for Marksman in 8.0. Again, as a disclaimer, the sims used to get these talents were performed with the most updated APL we have, but they could very well change in the near future. They use a baseline Mythic Gear setup. For the most updated info, check out my guide below. In this guide, I will only discuss the common talent builds used. For a full description and in-depth details and simulations on the different talents, check out my written guide in the description below. The first talent setup is our best setup for pure single target situations, however it has a couple limitations. The talent setup includes Serpent Sting, Careful Aim, Hunter's Mark, Lethal Shots, and Lock and Load. A couple things to note about this build. First, it's not very friendly when you have to swap targets. Maintaining Serpent Sting becomes too focus intensive at more than one target, and Lethal Shots is a very RNG heavy ability during AoE. Careful Aim is also only good on boss type encounters due to the longevity of the 80% and 20% thresholds. Careful Aim, as well as Lethal Shots, is also restricted by aim shot's target conditions and cannot deal damage to 2 targets or more than 6 targets. Personally, I only recommend using this build on fights such as Varimathus. Personally, for consistency and ease of use, I prefer to use this talent build. A Murder of Crows and Double Tap are much more consistent in single target and barely fall short of the other two talents. They also offer great mid-range AoE. I recommend this build on any fight with moderate ad spawns, or if you need on-demand bursts like Kingaroth due to Double Tap and a Murder of Crows. For AoE, our best talent build is this: Master Marksman, Explosive Shot, Streamline, Barrage, and Lock and Load. This is a very heavy AoE build which excels in multiple target scenarios, but it has to sacrifice some single target DPS. I would suggest using this build on fights such as High Command, ENR, or during Mythic Plus. In the most recent update, Barrage was nerfed slightly, so Double Tap has gained a lot of value. For pre-patch purposes in 8.0, I recommend sticking to Double Tap, especially since you can pair it with Warbelt of the Sentinel Army. Finally, let's get into the basic rotation for Marksman Hunter. Not much is different between our rotation in pre-patch and our rotation in Battle for Azeroth. It is a much simpler priority system as compared to the very cyclical, vulnerable rotation we had in Legion. In Battle for Azeroth, Marksman Hunter rotation will follow a priority system that focuses on maximizing certain resources. In simple terms, you will dump your focus using Aim Shot and Arcane Shot, and generate your focus using Steady Shot and Rapid Fire. Since our passive focus regen was hit pretty hard, we now rely on active focus regen through Steady Shot and Rapid Fire. Like in Legion, you want to always be casting something. This is even more important with the focus change and how little focus we develop passively. Below is a priority rotation you should strive to follow. First, you always want to try and use True Shot on cooldown. Try to use it while you have 0 charges of Aim Shot to avoid capping. If you have chosen Hunter's Mark, use Hunter's Mark on the target, preferably before combat starts. If you have taken the Double Tap talent, use Double Tap with Rapid Fire if it's about to come off cooldown. Try to use Double Tap plus Rapid Fire below 50 focus to avoid capping. If you have taken a Murder of Crows or Explosive Shot, use these next. Next, spend Precise Shot stacks via Arcane Shot. You never want to cast Aim Shot if you have Precise Shots because you would waste the Precise Shot stacks. Next, cast Aim Shot if you're about to reach 2 charges. Never cap on charges. Next, cast Rapid Fire. Try to use this below 70 focus to avoid capping on focus. If you have taken Serpent Sting, Barrage, or Piercing Shot, use these talents here. Finally, cast Aim Shot if you have an Aim Shot available and there's nothing else to do. Lastly, cast Arcane Shot to avoid capping focus. If you have absolutely nothing else to do, or you need to generate focus to cast your other abilities, cast Steady Shot. In general, try to keep these in mind when performing the rotation. You always want to avoid focus capping. You can use Arcane Shot after Rapid Fire when above 90 focus to avoid focus capping. Avoid casting Aim Shot above 90 focus. Due to Aim Shot's long cast, you will focus cap after finishing its cast. Use an Arcane Shot prior to casting Aim Shot to dump a bit of focus, unless you will cap on Aim Shot charges. It is better to focus cap than to cap on Aim Shot charges. Next, strive to cast Rapid Fire below 75 focus. If you are pairing it with Double Tap, strive to cast Rapid Fire below 45 focus. If Streamline is taken, cast Rapid Fire below 70 focus and 40 focus respectively. As a general rule of thumb, try to hover around 50 focus to use Steady Shot preemptively. Finally, let's take a look at our multiple target rotation. The goal of Marksman AoE is to apply trick shots as often as possible, while smartly managing your focus. The rotation itself is very similar to single target, but instead of Arcane Shot, Multi-Shot is substituted at 3+ targets, which activates trick shots. You must alternate between Aim Shots and Rapid Fires. It is recommended that you always use Multi-Shot directly after consuming your previous trick shot buff, as trick shots last up to 20 seconds. Below is an example of sustained AoE rotation, assuming 3+ targets are active. First, cast Barrage if you have chosen this talent. Next, cast Explosive Shot if you have chosen this talent. Next, cast Multi-Shot to apply trick shots. Next, cast Aim Shot. Then, cast Multi-Shot, which will apply trick shots again. If you have chosen Double Tap, use Double Tap paired with Rapid Fire, as always. Cast Rapid Fire. Next, cast Multi-Shot. This will also apply trick shots. Finally, cast Aim Shot. If you run out of focus, use Steady Shot to generate focus, which will continue your cyclical AoE rotation. Talents such as Explosive Shot and Barrage give Marksman AoE much more burst potential. Unfortunately, these are both huge focus constraints and limit the amount of aim shots we can cast following these. Double Tap is a much more focus conservative AoE talent, however, it is limited by its 1 minute cooldown. It is important to note that Rapid Fire is limited to 3 targets. The above rotation assumes you are starting with full focus. If you are entering AoE with lower focus, cast Rapid Fire prior to casting Aim Shot to generate more focus to continue the rotation. Rapid Fire should also be used over Aim Shot in any burst AoE situation since it does more overall damage. In AoE situations, Precise Shots is treated as a passive buff and every proc does not necessarily need to be consumed. Precise Shots buff should always be consumed during AoE anytime you have excess focus or have a haste buff such as True Shot or Bloodlust. One last thing to note for AoE. If you're wearing War Belt of the Sentinel Army, like you should be for AoE fights, this makes us want to cast Multi-Shot starting at 2 targets, even though we do not apply trick shots until 3 targets. The buff we get to Aim Shot from War Belt is too good to pass up, despite not getting trick shots. Alright guys, that about wraps up my pre-patch guide for Marksman Hunter. As always, follow and subscribe to get more info on all things Hunter. Check out the links and info in the description below, and be on the lookout for more of my upcoming guides. Thanks for watching!